But when you see the photos, things will be clearer.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Hey guys, Kiwi here, warning of spoilers for Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul up to Season 6, Episode 7. In this video, I'll be breaking down and discussing the mediator con that Jimmy and Kim were planning against Howard in the Sandpiper settlement case. Like the video if you end up enjoying it, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter for more Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad updates. If you really enjoy what I do here, maybe even consider checking out my Patreon or give back to the channel by clicking the super thanks button under the video. With that being said, let's jump into the breakdown.
I'm not crazy, and I'm not on drugs. Please, come in.
So the mediator con all starts in episode 605 after the Howard and Jimmy boxing match. Howard's plan wasn't just to box Jimmy, but to confront Jimmy and confirm that he was trying to ruin Howard's reputation. Jimmy agreeing to box Howard was an admission of guilt. If Jimmy would have just pretended Howard was crazy and walked away, Howard would have just stayed suspicious of Jimmy. But since Jimmy agreed to box Howard after being confronted, it lets Howard know that Jimmy has been behind it all. This causes Howard to pull the trigger on having a hired PI to follow Jimmy around. What Howard didn't know at the time is that Jimmy and Kim tricked Howard into hiring a conman as his PI. So in a way, Jimmy wanted Howard to know that he was behind it all because he wanted Howard to hire this PI.
I should have left Howard standing there like a yutz. Instead, I let him suck me into his game. Why'd I do that?
Because you know what's coming next.
Since Jimmy and Kim both worked at HHM, they knew that HHM had a PI agency on file. Also since season 3 when Chuck hired a PI against Jimmy to be a witness. They called Howard's assistant at HHM pretending to be the PI agency to quote-unquote update their number. The number they gave Howard's assistant was a burner number for the conman that Howard ended up hiring as his PI. Jimmy and Kim must have also gotten the conman through Caldera.
3 weeks ago, Julie got a call from our detective agency. They wanted to update their contact info. So, of course, she changed the number in the system, but it turns out it wasn't them. That was Jimmy.
So Howard's PI was a con man who was in on the scam the whole time, which was a popular theory throughout the season. Kudos to those who correctly predicted it.
So when I needed an investigator to follow Jimmy, I called his fake number and his fake man.
This explains why Jimmy and Kim weren't worried about being followed around during situations such as when they went to HHM on a date the night before D-Day. This also explains the PI's photo of Jimmy taking out a large cash withdrawal of $20,000 in episode 605. It didn't make sense why Jimmy would take money out from a bank when he had all that money from Wallow stashed away in Kim's apartment from season 5, but it's because it was all a part of the plan. The fake PI showed photos of Jimmy with a fake package, telling Howard that Jimmy made a large cash withdrawal that he saw with stacks of cash. They wanted Howard to think that Jimmy was taking out a large sum of money for some nefarious reason, and more on that in a moment.
But is there any reason he'd need that much cash in the normal course of business?
No legitimate reason.
Meanwhile, in episode 605, Kim caught up with her old paralegal assistant Viola from Schweikart and Coakley due to knowing that she was working on the Sandpiper case. Kim acted like she just wanted to catch up with Viola, but really her true intentions were to get information out of her in regards to who would be handling the mediation meeting between HHM and Davis and Maine versus Schweikart and Coakley on the Sandpiper settlement case.
No, it's not. It's a new guy. A retired judge who lives up in Santa Fe, Casimiro.
Kim gets the name of the mediator from Viola, a retired judge called Casimiro.
I got a name. Rand Casimiro, retired judge.
Wow, you wormed it out of her. Nice work.
Later that day, Kim finds photos of him and shows it to Jimmy because they plan on creating yet another body double, this time of the mediator. In episode 606, we see Jimmy and Kim taking photos of a mediator body double, focusing on his mustache for likeness, which they teased in the previous episode.
Ah, love the stash. That's a lot less face to worry about.
The plan was to create false photos for the PI to bring to Howard, making him think that Jimmy was bribing the mediator to force HHM and Davis and Maine to settle. All seems to go according to plan until Jimmy coincidentally sees the real mediator in the liquor store at the end of episode 606, seeing how he has a recently broken left arm. This causes Jimmy to freak out, calling Kim to warn her. This is because the fake photos they originally created of Jimmy bribing the mediator were supposed to take place the morning before the mediation meeting, but the photos obviously didn't include Casimiro's body double with a cast. Jimmy considers just pulling the plug on the whole scam and working something else out in the future, but Kim decides that this has to happen now. Kim ditched her meeting to potentially get her own pro bono law practice legitimately in order to make a last-ditch effort to fix the mediation scam, with episode 606 ending by showing Kim taking a literal U-turn to go back down Bad Choice Road.
We're gonna pull the plug and we are going to live to fight another day. What other day? It happens today.
And as a side note, in a future video I'll be discussing more in depth Kim's dream to get a pro bono practice law firm that she's had since the season 5 finale, including multiple choices that she's had to do throughout season 6, which relates to her decision to make that U-turn at the end of episode 606. So episode 607 starts with Jimmy and Kim the morning of the mediation meeting doing the most impromptu photo shoot scheme we've ever seen to try and get the fake photos right in time for the mediation. Jimmy convinces the same mediator body double that they used in the last episode for another shoot, bribing him with money and saying he'll talk him out of any trouble that he may have with his boss, and also calling to his passion for acting.
Seize the day. Carpe diem. Don't live with regret.
They go to UNM where Jimmy's camera crew is to pull them away from their classes to get this hasty photo shoot done. The cameraman Joey manages to talk Jimmy up for a hefty payday for short notice, causing him to skip part of the film class he was helping to teach.
500? What? We did the same job last week for 100.
If you think this is the same, feel free to go find someone else.
What? No, 500. Fine. Jesus.
5.
The drama girl shows up in a dark crystal outfit to help the Casemiro body double into makeup while Jimmy and Kim frantically wrap a cast on him. During the photo shoot, the sound guy, who's usually in control of the boom mic, has a tree branch connected to his boomstick in order for the photos to appear as if they're taken behind or inside of a bush, making it seem more realistic that the PI was spying on Jimmy in order to take these photos.
Ace is on the foliage.
With the help of Kim's direction, they successfully take photos of Jimmy pretending to bribe the judge with the same fake package of money that the PI had shown Howard beforehand. Then off screen they take another batch of photos, this time showing Jimmy handing the sound guy in a workout outfit and a fake mustache a frisbee instead. While Joey processes the photos in a dark room, Jimmy and Kim wear plastic gloves while lacing the fake bribe photos with the drug that they got from Caldera in episode 606.
All right. How we doing? I don't know. I guess my skin's a little dry where you put that stuff on, but otherwise...
This drug is topical, meaning that it absorbs into the skin. Jimmy and Kim wear gloves so they don't accidentally drug themselves while doing so. This drug dilates your pupils, and they're brushing it onto the fake PI photos so that Howard will be drugged when he touches them, making him appear high with dilated pupils during the mediation meeting. Once completed, Jimmy rushes the photos out in an envelope, still wearing his plastic gloves. This is where we get the big reveal that the PI was in on the scam the whole time, showing Jimmy deliver the laced fake bribe photos to the fake PI in his car as he rushes off to deliver them to Howard for right before the mediation meeting. Right before we discuss the actual mediation meeting, it'd be a good time to mention that Jimmy used Francesca back in episode 606 to get a dial-in number so they can listen to the meeting to see if their plan works in real time. Now this really highlights the vanity of it all in regards to Jimmy and Kim, and that they quote-unquote get off on hearing or seeing their plans actually correctly unfold.
It's so clear. Screw the money. You did it for fun. You get off on it.
This is also why Jimmy liked that he was able to stay and listen to Howard and Cliff's reactions in 601 to the fake drugs falling out of Howard's locker at the clubhouse. So back to episode 607. The fake PI arrives just in time before the meeting to deliver Howard the fake bribe photos.
Mr. Janidowski is here.
Now, Janidowski say what he wants?
Just that there's been a development, said you'd know what he means.
Now knowing that the PI is in on it, we see just how much he was also playing Howard the whole time. When Howard looks at the fake bribe photos, he notices that they're damp, but the PI just implies that they're fresh and directly out of the darkroom, which is true, but there's obviously more to that.
Sorry about that. Fresh out of the bath.
The PI lets Howard figure it out for himself, making him believe that he's onto something. Howard realizes that the package in the new photos is the same package from the previous episode that's supposedly a large cash withdrawal.
Didn't realize what it was until I saw the photos up close.
Oh my God. Same envelope.
The fake PI says that he doesn't know who the man in the photo is, but knows the car that he drives and saying that he'll do more digging. Howard tells him to work on it, but little does Howard know that he's about to find out who the man in the photo is, or is supposed to be rather. While convincing Irene to sit in a wheelchair, which I'll discuss more in my 607 review, Howard asks her if she's warm. Then he asks Cliff if he's warm, implying that he is himself. This lets the viewers know that Howard is definitely drugged and that the effects are just starting to kick in. While the mediator starts off the meeting with his traditional spiel, Howard just stares at him in pure shock. His mind must be racing in this moment as he puts 2 and 2 together with the photos from his fake PI and buys Jimmy and Kim's scheme hook, line, and sinker. And since the fake PI is letting Howard figure it out for himself, saying that he'll do more digging on who this person is, it also makes Howard think that he's onto something, realizing who the person is in the photos, making Howard think that he's figured it out himself and that now's the time to act, because if he waits for the PI, it'll be too late. Howard interrupts the meeting by saying wow, and apologizes while openly stating that the meeting can't continue. Howard starts accusing the mediator of being compromised and asks where he was that morning. Howard brings up Jimmy, which raises eyebrows from everyone at the table, since pretty much everyone knows who Jimmy is except for the mediator himself.
So you weren't in town to visit our mutual acquaintance, James Morgan McGill. Or maybe you know him as Saul Goodman.
I don't know anyone by either of those names.
Okay, you want to go that way?
Howard asks his assistant to go grab the photos on his desk, unaware that they've been swapped to make Howard look crazy. Howard disrespects the mediator, accusing him of taking a bribe from Jimmy. Howard is just so sure of what he knows, even though it's not true. The mediator asks about the photos being of him and accuses Howard of following him. Howard admits to hiring a PI to follow Jimmy, continuing to turn heads from everyone in the room, making Howard seem unhinged to all of them. Even Rich contests that Howard's side of the legal battle recommended this mediator and is now accusing him of being corrupt.
You recommended this judge as a mediator and we agreed. And now, Jimmy?
It's odd that the side that recommended the mediator is the one having the problem with him. We know from the previous scene with Irene that it was Cliff that recommended the mediator and that Howard has never seen him or he would have recognized him in the fake PI photos beforehand.
And the man with the mustache?
I was hoping you'd recognize him.
I don't.
This plan hinged on the fact that Howard didn't know what the mediator looked like until the meeting had already begun. If Howard knew beforehand, he would have canceled the meeting without much embarrassment. It's the fact that Howard only realizes who the mediator is during the beginning of the meeting that caused him to burst out and accuse the mediator right on the spot, publicly embarrassing himself. Howard also leaving the photos in his office due to not knowing it was supposed to be the mediator in the photos until it's too late, also allows the fake PI to swap out the photos for when Howard eventually does call his assistant to go get them. Rich also asks why Howard is bringing up Jimmy, the person who founded the case in the first place. I love how Rich, Cliff, Aaron, and even Irene have all had their separate experiences with Jimmy, making this so much more impactful than it already is. Howard assures them that once he sees the photos, things will be more clear. Little does Howard know how much that line will fall short and instead make it seem clear that he himself is unhinged. Howard says confidently that the photos will show exactly what he's describing, but once the assistant returns with them, we get a big reveal that the photos have been switched, making Howard look crazy.
Is that supposed to be me?
Howard rudely tells his assistant to check again, which also doesn't help his case. Howard starts acting frantic, accusing Jimmy of somehow sneaking into HHM and swapping the photos, saying that these aren't the real photos that he saw. Every time the show cuts back to Howard during the meeting, they show his face front, line, and center, causing the audience to anxiously anticipate the moment when his pupils become dilated until they finally do. Howard looks over at Aaron and she asks him if he's okay and points out his eyes. This makes Howard seem like he's on hallucinogens or something like that, and that he could have tripped out thinking it was the mediator in the photos when it clearly wasn't. Maybe just because of the mustache?
Julie, you got the wrong envelope.
That was the only one on your desk.
Look again.
Now, Howard's public embarrassment orchestrated by Jimmy and Kim this episode parallels Chuck's fate in so many ways, to the point that I could do an entire video on just that, but I'll mention a few points here.
Well, I'm gonna have to insist that you be more specific.
Howard frantically accusing Jimmy also parallels Chuck's chicanery outburst, where he accused Jimmy of everything he's ever done while on trial as a witness.
These are not the pictures I saw.
Mr. Hamlin, are you all right? Your eyes.
I am fine.
If he were schizophrenic, it wouldn't take away from the fact that the defendant...
I am not crazy!
It just makes both of them seem that much more unhinged, bringing up accusations against Jimmy without the full context of the situation they're describing.
You were photographed receiving what I estimate to be a $20,000 payoff this morning in the park. They've been switched. Somehow he switched them.
Howard?
No, Jimmy. He snuck in somehow and...
Defecated through a sunroof. Couldn't keep his hands out of the cash drawer. He got that idiot at the copy shop to lie for him. That's billboard.
Howard's confidence in the situation further implicated himself, as the pictures don't show at all what he's accusing. Similar to with Chuck, it's not just what they say while they're accusing someone, it's how they publicly act while doing so. If Howard would have just politely excused himself to go grab the photos himself, he would have avoided most of this public embarrassment. It's just the fact that he openly calls out the media, not only in front of everyone there, but everyone listening over the phone, that really causes this to blow up in his face. I'd also like to mention the fact that Howard probably freaked out here due to the drugs in his system, which not only visibly changed him, but also mentally, considering that Caldera said that it was like being on a bunch of caffeine, just like Red Bull.
It depends on how used to caffeine you are. I mean, you're not going to be tripping balls, but it's going to feel like, 2 Red Bulls on an empty stomach.
And also I'd like to mention how Cliff tries saving Howard multiple times.
Howard?
Howard, if the judge says he's sure, then
Of course I'm sure.
Howard, can we have a sidebar?
I'm sorry.
Howard?
No, Jimmy.
I think a recess is in order.
Just like in the past, how Howard tried saving Chuck, but just like how Chuck wouldn't back down, this time Howard won't either.
I'm going to that meeting.
Chuck, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm fine covering it myself. Kevin and Paige don't need both of us there. I'm just worried about your comfort.
I find victory laps very comforting.
And if you're not up to it, just throwing this out there, maybe you don't need to testify at all. It's already a solid case. Maybe there's no need to put you through the ringer like this.
What's interesting about Jimmy's schemes is that it doesn't matter if the victim eventually finds out the truth, just that they're fooled enough in the moment for the con to work and for Jimmy to get what he wants. An underrated example of this could be back in season 2 when Jimmy had an elder commit stolen valor to get video for his commercial by a fighter jet. The man that Jimmy conned in season 2 eventually finds out, confronting him in season 3, but it's too little too late. Jimmy already got what he wanted. Anyways, back to episode 607, Howard abruptly leaves, telling nobody to move, with Cliff following him. Irene's comment asking, "Is this how these usually go?" is a great comic relief to the incredibly tense moment currently unfolding. Howard goes outside to try and call his PI, but gets left with a disconnected number beep. Howard is starting to figure out what's happening and rushes upstairs, leaving Cliff behind. This is where everyone leaves the mediation, with Cliff apologizing to the mediator himself, since they know each other personally. With nothing to be said, the mediator wishes Cliff luck and leaves. Rich comes out to give Cliff a checkmate, saying that they're reverting back to his former offer and that he'll be taking $1 million off every single day until they take the offer. This is wild because Howard and Cliff had this case in the bag, but Howard's public outburst completely blew up in their faces and made them lose any leverage that they had.
I don't know what to say.
There really is nothing to say.
Cliff, confused and disappointed, follows Howard up to his office, who tells Cliff that he's not crazy. Now, if someone tells you that they're not crazy, there's like an 80% chance that they are.
I'm not crazy.
I am not crazy.
And Howard also says that he's not on drugs, but just the way that he's saying it could be like, okay, sure you're not. And Cliff also has personal experience with someone denying that they're on drugs with his son, so that just makes it that much more unbelievable.
It wasn't me, Cliff. Whoever you think you
sorry,
saw.
but that's the kind of thing my son used to say.
At this point, Howard has figured everything out, but it's too little too late.
I hired a con man. I got played every step of the way.
Howard explains to Cliff how Jimmy tricked him into hiring a con man as his PI, and that he got laced with drugs from the fake PI photos to make his pupils large, and that he got played.
Yeah, my PI, Jen Endowski, had to have been in on it.
It's wild how Howard puts every single thing together that Jimmy has done, similar to Chuck at the end of season 2 in regards to the Mesa Verde number.
It all went down exactly like you said. I mean, exactly. It is insane how you got every detail exactly right.
Cliff isn't worried about believing Howard, he's worried about how no one else will believe him and what everyone else will think. Whether or not Cliff believes him, it doesn't matter, the damage has been done.
I know what it sounds like, but you have to believe me.
Now, Howard refuses to take Rich's offer, saying that they'll take things to court, but that's the whole outcome that a mediation was trying to avoid. Cliff then checkmates Howard in a way saying that either they take Rich's deal, or Cliff will be forced to bring everything he's seen to the partners, including the manic drug activity. Even if Howard can't convince Cliff it was all Jimmy, there's no way he'll be able to convince anyone else. Cliff goes down to the meeting room saying that he has reached an agreement and that they will be settling. Not only that, but now knowing Howard's fate at the the end of the episode, I assume that Cliff will take over the decision making now that Howard is dead. Cliff will settle the Sandpiper case, and Jimmy and Kim got what they wanted, but at what cost? Meanwhile, during all of this chicanery,
This chicanery?
Jimmy and Kim's reactions listening in are just sickening. First showing Jimmy childishly miming himself reeling in a fishing rod while they first hear their plan working, and then they smile with glee and laugh at Howard making a fool of himself looking at the swapped photos, and then at the end start hooking up, presumably leading to sex, while Cliff states that they've come to an agreement and that the Sandpiper case will be settled. Howard was 100% correct at the end of the episode that they get off on this, and it makes me disgusted in these characters. Now, to be fair, they've been getting off on this kind of thing since season 2, and it was all fun and games, conning people for free booze and whatnot, but this is something else. Also, I'm a bit biased towards this moment considering we all know what happens to Howard at the end of the episode, but even before I knew that Howard was going to die, this still kinda honestly sickened me. Yes, it was unintentional for Howard to be killed, caught in Lalo's crossfire, but he still wouldn't have been there if it weren't for Jimmy, and that just adds to it all. Howard has one moment of finally standing up for himself, putting all the cards on the table to genuinely ask why they did this to him, and he gets shot in the head for it. Both Chuck and Howard have subsequently died due to having Jimmy in their lives, and although it's indirect, it's the show's writers and creators' vision that Jimmy is at fault. It is true that Howard would have originally landed on his feet eventually, but the Sandpiper cons that Jimmy and Kim did resulted in Howard going to their apartment that night and getting killed by Lalo.
But yes, I will land on my feet.
Yes, Howard's death was indirectly caused by Jimmy and Kim. Lalo pulled the trigger, but they're still at fault for his motivation to be there in the first place. Again, it was the creators' intentions that Howard's death would be an unforeseen consequence to their cons, making them, especially Kim, realize that their actions have deadly consequences. And then for Jimmy, it's due to him not learning his lesson for everything that happened to Chuck, now seeing it happen to Howard and right in front of him, and in a much more brutal manner. Let me know what you thought about the mediation con. This was the first time that we've seen them play the long con that lasts not only multiple episodes but over half a season. As Howard said, it took them weeks, possibly months. Usually con that Jimmy and or Kim does is only one scene or one episode, with the longest con beforehand being a few episodes in regards to Mesa Verde and Mr. Acker back in season 5. This Sandpiper scheme has been planned since the end of the season 5 finale, and some viewers felt like it was dragging on. I only found one slow episode out of all of season 6 and thought that the payoff in 607 was definitely worth it. 607 is possibly the best episode of Better Call Saul ever, getting a 9.9 out of 10, being the highest rated episode above Bagman, above Bad Choice Road, and above Chicanery. Not only does this satisfyingly conclude their Sandpiper con, but Howard's character arc over the 6 seasons as a whole. I tried to be pretty thorough with explaining the Mediator con in this video.
You sure?
But if I missed anything, feel free to mention it in the comments, and I'll mention any updates either in my 607 review or in my full season 6 part 1 tier list.
You think this is bad? This chicanery? He's done worse.
I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, and if you're new to the channel or just haven't yet already, subscribe and hit that bell notification to stay updated on when I post new content on Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. Check out the Patreon or give a super thanks to help support the channel financially. If you got a few spare bucks lying around, it'd mean a lot, and also thanks to those who have already. Also check out my episode 606 review I did previously just before this video, and look out for my 607 review I'll be doing in a few days, along with my season 3 tier list. But most importantly, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Pinky promise? Pinky, all the fingers. Just don't tell the others.
One after Magna Carta, as if I could ever make such a mistake. Never. What a sick joke.